when you're writing content, don't write content to target a keyword phrase. Write content to answer the questions your potential customers are going to have, because that's the kind of content that shows up well in Google. But to be more advanced with that, people are thinking, oh, if SGE ever comes out, or if the Gemini thing on voice comes out, it's going to completely screw my website. I'm never going to show up. I actually think it's entirely the opposite. I think if you want to start showing up better as AI becomes more integrated in the search experience, you have to have better content on your site to feed the model.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Search is changing faster in the last 24 months than it has in a long time, and it seems like the change is even accelerating. So I'm super excited to talk to Greg Gifford about the implications of all of these changes to local search in particular, but also search more broadly. So Greg, before we jump into the actual topic, so why don't you give like an elevator pitch of the areas that you focus on with regards to SEO and search?
Yeah, so I'm a local SEO guy. I have been for years. I speak at tons of conferences all over the world, and it's always about local SEO, even though I don't really do local SEO anymore because I'm the COO of a pretty big agency. So my actual job is the operational stuff, the COO stuff. But yeah, I'm a local SEO guy at heart. I have been for forever, and that's what I'm always talking about. That's what I do training classes on. That's the kind of clients we work with. We're primarily focused on car dealers in the US because for 12 years of my career, I worked at agencies that only did SEO for car dealers. So it's just, I'm well known in that vertical. We've got a lot of dealers, but we also have attorneys, we've got healthcare, we've got restaurants, we've got all kinds of different things. As long as they're a local SEO focus, we work with them.
Cool. So let's start with a fairly recent announcement. So there was Google Bard, right, which was their AI, and then they sort of pre-announced Gemini, and they had a couple of hiccups in the first demonstration of Gemini. But just within the last couple of days, they announced that Gemini was going to be available as an app to sort of replace voice-based search, because those of us who used voice-based search in any of the platforms are really all disappointed by it.
Yeah.
But from the perspective of Google, right, it's a logical place for them to experiment with AI replacement, because a lot of the voice-based search, whether it was on a home device or on a mobile phone, a smartphone, they weren't always showing SERPs, right? So they were already sort of trying to answer the question for you.
Yeah.
So that means somebody might actually ask a question like, what's the best SUV dealership in Dallas? Or, what SUV should I get if I'm interested in going off-road or whatever? And so you might have hyperlocal elements to that, and we don't know how the AIs are going to interpret that. So any thoughts on the implications of that to local SEO yet?
I think it's an interesting move for Google. They clearly want to play with AI and see what they can do, but I think most of us agree that SGE is not coming anytime soon because it screws too much of what the search results look like, and they don't want to screw themselves out of the gazillions of dollars they make every minute off of paid search. And if they're going to start moving the search results around, where are paid search results going to go if you've got the big SGE answer at the top? So I think they're a little hesitant to put that out for public consumption. So this makes perfect sense, where if you're doing voice search anyway, like you said, you're typically doing it on a Google Home device. I don't really think there's that many people that will use a Google app on their phone to ask questions for search. I think you're either going to use Cortana if it's a Windows phone, or you're going to use Siri if it's an Apple phone. But I think for Google Home, that's a big deal. Like, I've got Google Home in every room of the house, and we use it all the time. I think it makes a lot of sense to start trying it there and to see how it works, and to start training the AI to answer in a way that people are going to be more happy with.
Right.
I think it's a little bit of what we had back in, like, geez, 2017, when voice search Mageddon came out and everybody was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to change everything. And you'd go to PubCon and it would be every session was how to optimize for voice search, and it just never really took off because people didn't really search that way. And if they did, it tended to be more of the types of questions that if you were typing the exact same thing in, you'd get a featured snippet as an answer. You didn't really need to go to a website, or you didn't really need a list of websites to choose from or a list of businesses to choose from. It was typically a question that needed a quick answer. So I'm curious now if this is going to change, if the answers you're going to get from talking to your Google Home are better than the kind of answers you get right now, which is like, right now I ask my Google Home a question and it's going to show you a recipe on the screen or show you an answer on the screen. And if now they're going to be able to answer things more conversationally, maybe that's going to change the way people start using it at home. And I have no idea how that's going to end up going, but I think it's going to be interesting to watch.
For sure, for sure. So one other big change as it relates to the intersection of SEO and AI is that, and this is a recommendation I've been making for general SEO and future-proofing it against changes in people's behavior, but I'm curious whether you think it's also true for local, which is that in order to inform an LLM about who you are, what you do, and what you're great at, and all the various nuances of that, you want your content out there and syndicated, right? Because the more places that your content is syndicated, the more times you'll have positive mentions, which is sort of somewhat related, like a cousin of Barnacle SEO, right?
Yeah,
Which is the idea that you
totally.
want to try to take over the SERP and have as much positive mention as possible. So when I would advise people on sort of a local Barnacle SEO strategy, I'd be like, well, let's think about all the different profiles you have control over: your Yelp, your LinkedIn, your local Chamber of Commerce directory listing, and all those
Yep.
other things, right? It seems like those have ramifications from an LLM, AI perspective as well. So you should really be thinking about maybe even further fleshing out all those profiles, your Yelps, your LinkedIn's, your Better Business Bureau, your everything, and thinking about it from a hyperlocal SEO perspective alongside AI.
Definitely. And and it's not just all of the Barnacle opportunities, it's your own site as well. And I actually think this is going to lead or I'm hopeful, let's put it that way, that this is finally going to lead people to write better content for their sites.
Right.
I have a weekly video series, and I'm literally, as soon as I'm done with this podcast interview with you, I'm jumping over into the video studio to shoot next week's video. And next week's video is literally about, when you're writing content, don't write content to target a keyword phrase. Write content to answer the questions your potential customers are going to have, because that's the kind of content that shows up well in Google. But to be more advanced with that, people are thinking, oh, if SGE ever comes out, or if the Gemini thing on voice comes out, it's going to completely screw my website. I'm never going to show up. I actually think it's entirely the opposite. I think if you want to start showing up better as AI becomes more integrated in the search experience, you have to have better content on your site to feed the model, for the model to understand what it is that you do and the kinds of services or products that you sell and why you're different from the competition. And if you have the same cookie cutter stuff that everybody else has, it's always been bad, but now it's going to be really bad because those models aren't going to be able to differentiate you from anybody else. So when you start writing better content, that's conversational content that truly answers the questions people are going to ask, that's how you're going to stand out in the future and show up, regardless of what that interface looks like. So I'm hopeful that maybe this will start cutting back on all the spammy content that people continue to shovel out because they think it's going to work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can only hope that
Yeah,
people start to realize they have to delight the consumer to delight Google.
exactly.
Obviously, YouTube's the second largest search engine, right? So in a hyper-local environment, just like with regular SEO, having a video SEO strategy is important. Do you feel like local marketers are sort of forget that and sort of
Oh,
forget to?
I don't think local marketers, I think marketers in general don't really think about video. And it's crazy. You see all these presentations at conferences about TikTok and TikTok SEO and like optimizing for TikTok's algorithm, which is really a thing. But none of these people ever talk about, yeah, you want to go play in TikTok, you want to get leads from TikTok, here's how to do it, here's how to, game the algorithm or whatever so your videos get more visibility. But they don't also talk about the fact that, like, hey, by the way, take those same videos and put them on YouTube and optimize them for YouTube, because you're going to get way more visibility in the long run off of
Yeah.
putting those videos on YouTube than you are off of throwing them on TikTok and hoping that you catch somebody's eye and maybe go semi-viral. That's something a lot of people miss out on. And even the people that play in video a lot, they think it's more about just having the video, and they're not optimizing the video. They're not optimizing the description. They're not optimizing the tags on the video. They're not optimizing they're not thinking about the presentation of the video on the site and using schema markup on the video so that it's going to show up better in search results. So I think video SEO is kind of coming back into the forefront after 10 years, because people are starting to kind of realize, oh, wow, this could really make a difference,
Yeah, and I think we're not sure yet, but the evidence seems to indicate that the LLMs are actually starting to work with the transcripts of audio and video as more likely to be authentic,
Yeah.
because it's harder to game. I mean, you'll maybe be able to create an entirely fake replica of this conversation in a year with AI and have it completely be AI. But for
Right.
now, right, the only way that this conversation occurs is if two humans who are intelligent are having a conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And, when you think about specialists in a market, whether they're, I mean, you talk about auto dealers and the fact that they make a lot of their profit from their service departments, right?
And they
And
completely ignore that area of their site and have zero content.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they may have some really smart mechanics who could actually show you like what they're doing when they're doing stuff and shoot it with an iPhone or an Android device. And as long as the person's not scared of the camera, if they're articulate and maybe a little charismatic, or even if they're not, why not create the video, go ahead and put it up there, because a lot of folks need to know how to attach the the iPhone to that particular vehicle, right?
Yeah,
Because it's
exactly.
a quirky.
Well, and people nowadays would so much rather watch a quick video than read a blog post or a page on the site, even if it's really detailed and has a step-by-step guide that you can read. The vast majority of people now, under probably age 60, would much prefer to just have that video to walk them through it. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget that nowadays. It's not just, you hear everywhere at conferences and in podcasts and in videos and in blog posts and whatever, that you need instant answers and people want instant answers. But you got to think about what's the best way to provide that instant answer. And that probably means having a video, but you also need the transcript on the page so that Google can index the content. And so the AI models will eventually start to, whether they're doing it now or not, we don't really know, but
Right.
we want all of that text content there to go along with the video. And I don't think a lot of people make that connection, even still today.
Right. Right. So yeah, absolutely. A huge opportunity. So what else do you see as sort of the big missed opportunity when you go into somebody who's perhaps not as digitally savvy in the restaurant or auto industry, and they're chugging along, taking advantage of the fact that their physical location is in the perfect spot, right?
Yeah.
So, they get all the visibility of the drive-by people, and so they perhaps have ignored digital, or maybe they just get so much co-op dollars that they just sort of toss it into somebody does it, but they do a half-assed job,
Exactly.
right? Where's the low-hanging fruit for a lot of these folks?
Oh, geez. I mean, the Google Business Profile is usually the quickest and easiest thing to find low-hanging fruit that will make an impact when you update it. So the most influential thing for local search the most influential factor is the categories that you have selected in your business profile. Most people will pick one, and there's usually more than one that apply to that business. And we work with a lot of car dealers. There are more than 10 categories that apply to sales. So you should have 10 categories on your primary profile. And a lot of dealerships still don't have the separate parts department profile and sales department or service department profile, which, if Google is going to change the rules for one particular vertical and let you do things that are against the rules for everybody else, you should probably do that thing And like 40% of the dealers out there still haven't set those departments up. And if they do set them up, they don't set it up correctly, and they've got categories mixed between all three. So just cleaning up category choices, setting up your departments the way you're supposed to, having great photos in there, preloading questions into the Q&A section and answering those questions. Those are some really impactful things that not only affect ranking, but affect visibility
Sure.
and affect conversions. Like having questions preloaded and answered in the Q&A section doesn't at all influence how you rank, but it's massively influential for conversions and click-throughs. So I think that's another thing, is people have to understand that some of the things that you do aren't going to affect your visibility, but they're going to affect how many conversions you get when you are visible. And then on the website side, I think the biggest low-hanging fruit is just content. Most people do not have sufficient content on their site, and they don't realize that they need one page per concept. So they'll have, car dealers will have a service department page with a bullet point list of oil change, tire rotation, battery, wipers, and that's the only page of content they have, and it's not even 200 words. And they wonder why Jiffy Lube is taking all the business for oil changes and tire rotation and quick lube and all of that. And, restaurants, same thing. They'll have their menu page and that's it, but no photos of what it looks like in the restaurant. People want to see what your venue looks like. You got to think about when someone's trying to decide where they want to go as, a restaurant or a bar. Sure, they want to know what's on the menu, and they probably are curious to see what those photos look like, but everybody knows the photos are going to be good photos because you're not going to put up crappy photos. But nobody really thinks about putting up photos of the restaurant or the bar. Or if they do have those photos, they're just on the Google Business Profile and it's of the venue completely empty. You want to have every table full of smiling, happy customers and waiters and waitresses walking around. Same thing we work with a lot of doctors' offices. Don't show the office empty. Show people in there. Yeah, sure, you've got HIPAA issues. You don't want to take pictures of your patients, but hire actors. Have your own staff. Have the front office staff pretend to be a patient so that the doctor's actually sitting there talking to somebody. People want the experience that they're going to have at that local business to match the perception of what it's going to be. They need to, in their head, they want to know, what's it going to be like if I buy from this place or go do business here? And you need to have those, not just having content that answers the questions about the services or products, but what's the experience like as well? And I think that's something most businesses don't think about and don't have on their site. And those are simple things that you can do to really stand out from the competition. Maybe you don't rank number one. Maybe you rank number 2 or number 3, but you're going to get a lion's share of those customers if the competition that outranks you is lacking that stuff on their site or their business profile.
Yeah, there's nothing more exasperating, even as a consumer, where the business is actually relevant when you say such and such near me, and then Google doesn't even list it, and you're like, what a fail, right?
Yeah,
for that business to just not even show up for one of the primary things that they do. A lot of business owners also, of course, obsess about ratings, right?
Yeah.
Because they may be either scared to ask, or in some cases there are regulations where they can't ask. I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain medical in particular where you're not allowed. You have this power dynamic where the ethics guidelines for your business, your
Yep.
industry say you can't ask for.
Or even beyond that,
Yeah.
every business, when you start to talk to them about their reviews, literally everyone's advice is just make sure you ask every customer, because people forget it's not really human nature to leave a review when you're happy. You're going to go leave a bad review when you're mad, but if you're happy, you're not really going to leave a review.
Exactly.
But if you're asked and you're happy, then you're almost obligated to go leave that review. And every time you bring that up and say, just make sure you ask every customer for a review, most of the time the people that aren't doing it are like, oh, I don't want to do that because I'm going to get more bad reviews.
No, usually they're good.
And usually they're good, but also I follow up with that and say, well, why are you scared you're going to get bad reviews? Are you not giving good customer service? Because if you're scared to ask because you're not giving great customer service, then the problem you need to fix isn't anything related to what you're doing digitally. The problem you need to fix is care about your customers and give good customer service. But if you do that, you're not going to get more bad reviews. You're going to get the bad reviews whether you ask or not. The problem is you're not going to get the good reviews unless you ask. And that's the disconnect with most of the business owners out there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you make an excellent point, because no amount of marketing, whether it's earned media marketing or paid media marketing, can overcome a bad user experience, right?
Yeah,
You
not at
need
all.
to make a brand promise, then you need to fulfill it, right? So you need to fulfill that promise and delight the customer. And then, everything else falls out of that, because if you don't manage to deliver on what you're promising, you have more problems than just marketing.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Cool. So any other low-hanging fruit? That was some great stuff there on round one.
Yeah, I mean, really for us, it's just always just a complete lack of content. There's just hardly any content on the site. And the Google Business Profile is it just hasn't been touched in years and there's nothing there. Sure, link building is important, but like it's nowhere near as important as those two. And customer reviews are important, and we already talked about that, but really it's the Google Business Profile and the content on the site. That's the vast majority of what's going to influence your visibility in search. So it's having those answers and matching that user experience. And like, beyond that, I could get into like nitty gritty of like, well, yeah, people usually don't write their meta descriptions the right way because they're stuffing keywords and they're not thinking about the fact it doesn't influence ranking and you need to write something compelling to get more click-throughs. Or, with local search, a lot of people in their content or in their title tag or their H1 heading will say, whatever phrase they're targeting, serving customers in like 6 cities. And you're not going to show up in 6 cities just because you listed them in a title tag or in a paragraph of text. And I mean, that gets a little bit more specific, but I think if we're talking low-hanging fruit, easy fixes, beyond the just high level, you need the content, you need to have an optimized profile, it's people don't really understand how Google works. And they write content targeting keywords, and they don't really think, is this really gonna work? Like, we've been talking to a whole lot of car dealers because we just had the NADA convention in Vegas last weekend, which is like the biggest convention of the year for car dealers. And the most common thing that we were saying when we were talking about SEO at the booth is we were like, look at your homepage. Have you read this content out loud? You would fire your salesperson if your salesperson greeted a customer that just walked in the front door with even half of the stuff that you have on your homepage. All of your content is absolute crap because either the marketing person at the dealership or the marketing agency that you're using for your SEO is just trying to shove in a bunch of keywords, and they're trying to do SEO from 10 years ago, but even what they're doing wouldn't have worked 10 years ago, but in today's world, it really doesn't work. And it's not like you have to have a huge brain and understand all the intricacies of the algorithm. It's really pretty simple, common sense stuff. Like we were talking to a Ford dealer that didn't have another competing Ford dealership for like 150 miles in any direction. And yet all of the content on their site and on their blog from their marketing provider was Ford dealer in a city, Ford dealership city, buy a Ford from us, why you want to buy a Ford from us. It was all of this content that was like targeting basically Ford dealer or Ford dealership terms in their town or in surrounding towns. And I said, look, you don't even have to write this content at all. You are literally the only option. You could do no SEO around this, but there's no competition, so you're always going to rank number one. You've got this provider that you're paying money for, adding additional content every month around terms that you already rank number one for.
You're right.
And they're not adding content around all of the service-related things that you do, or around used cars, or around parts, or all the things that if you did show up for these searches, you'd sell more stuff and make more money. Like, I don't think a lot of people think about what they're actually getting with SEO. I think SEO is this big, scary thing that's really complicated, and people freak out a little bit because with PPC, it's really easy to know. I put money in to target this keyword, and this ad showed up and got me a conversion, and I sold something off of this ad. That's very easy for everyone to understand. But with SEO, you're like, you got to spend money on it, either with an internal role or with a vendor partner. You spend money, and do these things that we're kind of pretty sure that Google's going to look at, but no, we're not 100% sure, and we can't guarantee results, and most likely you're going to have to spend money on this for 3 or 4 months before you see any results. And people just get really freaked out and scared, so they just kind of have to take that leap of faith that their vendor partner or their internal role is doing the right stuff. But it's usually not that hard to see, is this the right thing or not? Like with that Ford example, why is every piece of content targeting something that you're already going to rank number one for? Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to know a lot about Google or what Google's looking at or understand title tags and meta descriptions and alt text and schema markup and all these other things. Think about it at really simple levels. Does this make sense? Why would they add this content to my site? That's usually the biggest error when it comes to SEO, is just doing dumb things that you don't even have to know SEO to understand that common sense dictates this is a bad idea, but people aren't thinking about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the things I found that's really handy, because sometimes, the budgets at clients are super siloed. Like they think of things in really narrow buckets when in reality, the buckets overlap in a Venn diagram. And, one of the things that I find sometimes, shakes loose extra resources is to sort of have the conversation about social media content at the same time as the SEO conversation, right? Because if you're going to create something where like you're interviewing the top salespeople, or what are people asking for in SUVs this month, right? Or, is gas mileage still a problem, or whatever it is, you may be thinking like, oh yeah, I'm doing this for my social media. And like completely ignoring the SEO benefit of the transcript of that video that you shot with the sales manager about what people are asking for, or whether the service department suggests you put snow tires on your vehicle or not for the winter. Like all of these things are content, and they're thinking TikTok, or they're thinking Instagram, or they're thinking YouTube, right? And they're not thinking, well, yeah, I guess I should also embed that video on my website and write about it.
There's so many different moving parts
Yeah.
between SEO and social media and SEM and any traditional marketing you might be doing. And I think you're right. I think people really look at it really siloed between the budgets for the different things. One of the biggest things we always talk about is, if you're doing PPC and SEO together, yeah, sure, Google's algorithm doesn't care if you're running paid search and it's not going to help you rank better. And the paid search side doesn't care if you're doing SEO and it's not going to help you show up better. But it all helps if you show up in more places in the search results page. Even if people are going to scroll past the ads because they know they're ads, they still see them when they scroll past, and they see you there and you're in multiple places, you're more likely to get clicked. That's been proven time and time again. And more specifically on the paid search side, the work that the SEO team does to make the site better makes the paid search ads convert better, because you have a better experience on the landing page from a user standpoint, and it typically makes the quality score better, which means you're going to show up more often and spend less money. And people don't make that connection a lot of times. And I think it's because they have that siloed approach. Oh, well, I do SEO and I do PPC and I do social ads, which, why are you counting Facebook ads and PPC separately? It's paid media. Like, you're buying ads. It's the same thing. And then they're like, well, I've got my traditional stuff over here and my direct mail stuff over here. And let's start to look at it as, I have a marketing budget and I need to figure out the best mix for that budget and find a partner or a couple of partners that will work together to be better stewards of my marketing dollars. So You're not just chipping in money in various places that aren't talking to each other and have no cohesive strategy. It's so much better when you do have that, at least communication, either between internal departments or between vendors, or have one vendor that can do it all. It's so much better to have that cohesive strategy than to kind of just piecemeal things and, do those TikTok or YouTube videos like you were just talking about, and not also put them on the site for content. That's where you have those disconnects and those missed opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So what has you excited about the next year? Like, I mean, obviously a lot of things going on with AI, but beyond that, anything going on professionally or or conferences
I
you're
mean,
going to
I've got
go
some
to?
really
Or
cool conference trips coming up this year. I'm lucky enough to be a popular presenter, so I get invited to do keynotes all over the world. So I leave in 3 weeks to do a conference in Australia, and then I come home for 3 weeks, and then I'm spending 2 weeks in Europe because I'm doing a conference in Slovenia, but we're flying into the Venice airport. And we're going to spend a week in Rome and Venice, and then I'm going to Brighton SEO in the UK. And then this summer, I'm doing a keynote in Brazil. So I've never been to Brazil. I'm real excited about that. I get to go to, I'm doing SMX Advanced in Berlin in the fall. I'm going back to Brighton SEO in the fall. I'm doing Brighton SEO in November in San Diego for the US version. And then I'm doing a conference in Bali at the end of November. So for me, I'm just really excited to have some really cool trips. From a professional side, though, I'm not really too worried about SGE. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's coming, or maybe it's not. I'm not really worried about that. I'm kind of just excited to see Google's very clearly putting a lot more effort into local lately. You know, we have the new NMX experience, like the editing of your Google business profile in the search results instead of going to a separate dashboard, and the new experience for verification is all video based. So it's a lot harder for spammers to create fake profiles. So that's exciting. And then the new reinstatement process. A lot of people are freaking out because if you get suspended, and Google's very suspension happy lately, if you get suspended, you get one chance to get it back, and you get 60 minutes to provide all the documentation. And a lot of people are freaking out, but I think that's going to make things better because now you get that one shot, and it's pretty simple to figure out what you need to do because Google literally tells you what you need to supply. So I think that's going to cut back. I think Google's being a lot more aggressive in cutting back on all the fake profiles. They're being a lot more aggressive with fake reviews. So I think all of the effort that they're starting to put into local is going to pay dividends for all of the people that have to play in local in the next few years, where it's going to be easier. We're going to have to do a lot less spam fighting. And I think there's some features coming that will be really neat for all the local businesses. Some of which I can't talk about because I'm a product expert on the Google Business Profile Forum. So I have an NDA, and I know some cool things that are coming that I can't talk about, but
well,
local is going to be a lot of fun.
yeah, that's exciting. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Greg, for joining us and sharing all your wisdom about local search, and in particular some of the low-hanging fruit ideas. That's great stuff.
Happy to be here. Always love to share knowledge, and I know local is very confusing for a lot of businesses, and typically, local businesses or smaller businesses that don't have the budget to invest in working with the big agencies. So I always love any opportunity to be able to share the information and help people.
Absolutely. Well, safe travels to Bali. I may try to get myself on that agenda.
Yeah. It's a long trip. I did it 2 years ago. I did it a year ago, and it's 26 hours just in airplanes.
Right.
Layovers. So it was brutal travel.
Yeah. Well, you got to add a few days on either side for some beach time.
Oh, we're probably staying like 3 weeks this time. I'm taking the kids. I'm probably retiring to Bali. Bali is my favorite place I've ever been. It's amazing.
Cool. Well, safe travels to all those locations, and we'll catch up soon.
All right. Take care.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.